All right, welcome to the Lead Generation World podcast. My name is Michael Faree. I'm your host today, as always. Thanks for joining the show today. We got a great one. We've got Simon Akers from Archmon with us here today. We're going to talk a lot of shop about the UK marketplace, lead gen, all types of different things, with Simon today. So I look forward to having that conversation, you listening in and providing a little feedback on how it went. But before we bring Simon in, I do want to remind you guys that are listening, we've got Lead Generation World coming to London October 18th and 19th. We have registration that's going to be opening in March. It looks like it's going to be ready to go live March 25th. So put that in your calendars. Everyone who is able to register early will definitely benefit on a great price. If you're interested in sponsoring Lead Generation World London, feel free to go to the website leadgenerationworld.com and reach out to us, and we'll send you some information how you can have your stand at the show or sponsor the event in a bigger way. So check us out, leadgenerationworld.com. You can click on the London link at the top, and you'll find out a lot more information there. So anyway, I am excited to bring on Simon to the show. Simon is a longtime lead gen and performance marketing professional, has his own company where he helps buyers and sellers connect. And so let's bring on Simon and talk a little shop. All right, welcome to the Lead Generation World podcast. I've got Simon Akers here from his company, which is Archmon. Welcome, Simon. Thank you for joining me on the show.
Thank you for having me on, Michael.
Yeah, definitely. So, Simon, you're in Lincoln, which you just sort of explained to me is a couple hours north of London.
That's correct. Yeah, not Lincoln, Nebraska. Just to make it clear.
That's a few more hours. Yeah,
I believe this is one of the original Lincolns. It's obviously it was one of the main Roman settlements in early English history. So it's actually an area that I actually grew up in, and having spent many years in London, I decided to, with my scars of London life, to emigrate from the city. It's like the people who move to upstate New York, I imagine, after living in Manhattan and Brooklyn. It's the equivalent, It's very important to get out, get a little bit of mind space and head space to really focus on my venture. So yeah, that's where I am.
Yeah, but so you still are torturing yourself by taking the train in every so often to London.
Yeah, I'm clearly a masochist, Michael. So I have clients there, and many of my partners, which power my business, are there as well. So pretty much on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, I'm down in London. So, but you know what? Believe it or not, we do have trains here that work well, and the London North East Railway has a pretty quick service, so I can get from my nearest station, which is called Newark Northgate, I can get into London King's Cross in an hour and 15 minutes. So
nice.
In the world of digital and fast trains, we can make the world a smaller place.
Yeah, definitely. That's not too bad. So yeah, let's actually. So first of all, thanks for joining me here. I wanted to bring you on and just sort of talk a little shop and learn more about what you got going on with regards to performance marketing and lead generation and all that sort of stuff. But before we sort of dive into what you're doing now, tell me a little bit about the sort of evolution of how you sort of got into, when was your sort of first entrance into performance marketing or digital or lead gen? Was it right out of school?
Yeah. So at university, I actually did geography. I love travel and the world, and I was just kind of the kid I just look at maps and enjoy them and look at the cities and think about what the world would be like if I traveled more. I mean, I didn't travel a lot as a kid. My mum never liked flying, and we always went on holidays around the UK. and nothing against them. It's just my mum. She doesn't particularly like getting in the air and like.
Yeah, sure.
But I think I've always had this penchant for the world and cities and understanding different cultures and people.
Well, so it makes sense that, you went to school for geography and then you just got into digital marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Why would it be the most obvious fit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say people with geography, you know where you're going, which is ironic because I didn't know where I was going. I did something at university, like a lot of people go to college and you do it there, you do something you enjoy. most people do business and management, but I was like, this just seems so boring. I want to travel. I want to see the world. And that was my conduit in. And I ended up being back in the so-called dull business marketing world. So there you go. But what I would say is in the third year, I really studied human geography and demographics. And I did a dissertation on the redevelopment of Birmingham city centre. Now, again, that's not Birmingham, Alabama. That's Birmingham,
Right.
UK. And it was a bit of a shambles, but they did some really good architecture to redevelop the city centre. And I looked at a lot of data around different demographics in different areas, and it got me thinking. I really like this. I like this whole data thing.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I went to a recruitment agency, and they were specialised in recruiting sales and marketing people. So I thought maybe I could do a little bit of this. And I got a job at Experian. That was my first role in marketing. And Experian, of course, big global data solutions business. They do risk data, credit data, marketing data. And I discovered things like commercial mosaic, which is about segmentation, and creating certain demographics and types on both B2B and B2C. And I just thought to myself, yeah, this is really bloody interesting. And the old kind of, everybody's talk about, left-handed jugglers from the Highlands and whatnot, and understanding different demographics. So that was kind of my first furore into marketing. And then from there, I went to work with a small group of lead generation providers and data businesses, and understood how a key piece of intelligence real time can impact a business in a positive way. And from there, a wider affiliate performance, and I sit here a few years later to try and impart some of the things I've picked up over the years to my clients.
So now you started your own company, Archmon. Am I saying that right?
Archmon.
Yep.
I've been called worse, so it's fine.
And you started about less than a year ago.
Correct.
Tell me a little bit about what you're, servicing and what you're providing to your clients today.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think you spend your life and your time building up your toolbox of experiences and contacts and channel expertise. And it just felt like high time. This isn't my first business. I've had a business before, but I was simply buying and selling, and it was arbitraging on performance, very, very, tight metrics.
Yeah.
But now I thought to myself, how can I actually give more value to businesses, but also pay myself more and get more value as an entrepreneur?
Sure.
And actually, that's where Archmon came about, because I thought, I can monetize my time as a consultant. I can do brand and performance marketing strategy and planning for clients. So I go to brands directly and I say, I can help you with how can we maximize your capability and your media investment. Or if you're a startup, I can help them do a go-to-market strategy. Or if they're a little bit longer in the tooth, I'd like to use my network, which is one of my advantages, I would say, to really cultivate something unique and then play that into the client. Now, I also have, as part of it, I've built up a business called the Outcome Collective. And it's a group of practitioners and marketing vendors and networks who then see the said strategy through. So I would do the plan for the client, and then I'd work with partners who would then make that come to life. So there is an element of agility to it, and hopefully there's a bit of trimming the fat on the costs to ultimately help things back out to clients on an ROI. That is the plan.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, like, when we look at sort of lead generation ecosystem within the UK. Obviously, there's been some evolution since you first started getting in the business with Experian and with data. What's sort of the state of sort of lead generation today in the UK? Where's it at with regards to trust and transparency and brands utilizing companies for third-party data and leads?
Great question, Michael. As you may or may not know, I mean, the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, hit a couple of years ago. Yep. And I think a lot of people were spending their time trying to prepare for it. I think a lot of different sectors have been, after the fact, stung by that. For example, a lot of the programmatic display partners and ad networks, they're not being able to use certain third-party data without opt-ins, therefore their scale has diminished. However, I think generally, I would say that the lead gen, I suppose, methodologies and sector in itself proved itself before that, because actually a lot of the co-registration partners, co-sponsor, exit pages, dem gen, RFQs, a lot of them made it pretty clear from the start that there was going to be an implicit opt-in to a particular brand. I mean, I worked with a great company, and they did like a one-to-many model where you'd say, let's compare the cost of CRM systems, and then you type in your details, size of business, size of sales team, and then it's a kind of a nebulous kind of, you may hear from, for example, maybe there's some Salesforce or Sage kind of logos underneath. But now I think that's shifted a little bit, and the paradigm shift is now it's implicit opt-in and implicit consent. So the winners are those who genuinely get an inbound demand gen lead, and it's clearly, Michael at leadgenworld.com fills it in. Michael at leadgenworld wants a quote on a particular system and that brand. Michael submits that, and then Michael gets a call from said brand. Yeah. And that is the way that I think I'm sure it's similar in the US, but that's very much how things have evolved here in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, we've had something similar. Here it's called TCPA.
That's the one. Yeah.
And it's the same exact thing, which is where the lead generator or the publisher or the website needs to explicitly say what's going to happen with their data, in a number of forms. One, how are they going to be contacted? Are they going to be called via phone, an automated dialer, a text, an email? And then where is that data actually going to? Is it going to, a bank, and what bank is it going to? If it's a remortgage or a refinance. And there needs to be some explicit content showing what's going to happen with their information. And I think this is all good because it, I think like you were alluding to, it provides, some narrow framework for how data is being sold, unlike potentially before where leads could be just sold off to anybody without the consumer really knowing where the heck it's going.
I know, yeah, exactly. And I think there's more provenance now in having the right data rather than all the data. I think there was all these kind of daft terms in the mid-noughties like big data, and it sets a precedent that everyone just wants to hoard all the records. But I always say to people, I'd rather convert 10% of 100 than 1% of 1,000.
Absolutely.
And, if you could work harder and smarter, more nurtured, because ultimately, if you have a specific brand opt-in, there's going to be a lower scale. But given the pre-filtering on that user journey, you'd expect more intent and a better path to conversion, and ultimately a better user experience as well.
And there's something around, I think lead buyers and maybe brands sort of miss is that in what you're saying about I'd rather close 1 out of 10 versus 1 out of 1,000 is all that work and time and cost that go into working the 1,000 leads versus the 10, right? The soft cost, like, the employee cost, the phone calls, all this sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
That people forget about. So they go, well, I just want cheap leads, right? Or they want the cheapest cost. But what they're doing is they're just doing a trade-off of cost, right? They may be paying £5 for a lead, but all the costs that go into working those poor quality leads.
Let's do 100 hours of telemarketing at $20 an hour. That's $2,000, which is immediately shut up your cost per acquisition straight away. So your so-called cheap lead on the surface isn't looking so good now, is it? And that's, I think it's understanding that if you can get a really good UX to take a lot of the heavy lifting away from the capture of that said piece of intelligence, then hopefully you need less, hours of humans, I say human hours to actually convert that. So that's the theory, right? That is the hope.
Yeah.
But no, I really think that. I mean, I've seen results. It's a proven point. I've seen this.
Yeah. Do you find that the buyers or the brands that you work with have fully grasped the concept of the metrics of closed loan or closed sale metrics, not just top of funnel cost per lead, but also cost per contact, cost per application, cost per sale, whatever the product is?
It does vary. I mean, there is some really cognizant buyers out there, and let's, be very clear about that. And some of my clients are really smart, and they work there. They factor everything into their cost per acquisition. I'm talking, how long they keep the lights on and how many coffees they make in the espresso machine, that kind of thing, right? But then you've got the other side of it who are literally just looking at, oh yeah, we have a post-click conversion of 10%. Our cost per lead £2, so our cost per acquisition is £20. I mean, that would never happen. But what I'm saying is that there's
Yeah.
basic metrics that go into it. I don't know whether there is the answer to actually to get this perfect for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I think ultimately, I think the more factors that are considered outside of just the cost of marketing, the better. I think it's ultimately the business outcome. And this comes back to the thing about measurement. And one of my great bosses I work with in a leading agency group actually said, if you can measure it, it doesn't mean it matters. And I actually do
That's
some
true.
dashboard and reporting strategy with clients. And actually there's a massive skew of people measuring things that like what was the cost per click or what was the click-through rate. I mean, it's all good stuff and it's useful supporting metrics, but ultimately you have a business goal, you have inputs and outputs. Your inputs is your cost of marketing, your human capital, your laptops, and your output is your leads and conversion. And I think it's very simply backing it back to a CPA or cost per acquisition. And then within there, the cost per lead needs to be sensitive to that.
Yeah. And I think, well, I guess what I was trying to, say along those same lines that you're saying is that, sometimes brands get stuck on focusing on just the lead cost or maybe just the click cost or whatever it is. And they're not looking at all the way down the funnel and going, okay, well, at first look, maybe a lead looks expensive, right? But, if it converts more, it's actually cheaper than
Yeah,
maybe something
of
else if you're not
course.
looking. Yeah.
Of course, I mean, I was consulting with a B2B agency and they were looking for leads for an HR and recruitment platform. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, with respect, if you go on Google search terms and keyword planning and trends, you're not seeing many people searching for that, right? Now, because of that, the cost per click is high. The conversion rate is, relatively high within there because the clicks are low, but it's understanding those metrics. If you're a broadband provider and then a couple of new providers come in or someone comes in with a ridiculous offer for £5 for the first 6 months, I'm pretty sure that your conversion is going to be affected as well. So it's understanding the wider market and actually looking at Google Trends, looking at who's paying for position one, looking at the comparison engines for affiliates and aggregators, and ensuring that you are actually in a position where you're understanding the market. So ultimately, if the head of marketing has to say to the CEO, look, the cost per lead's gone up, I know exactly why.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've looked at, you mentioned earlier that at one point you sort of bought and sold arbitrage leads. And you're not necessarily doing that now, I'm gathering. But one of the things that I'm curious to know about, and it kind of is along the same lines as what we're talking about now with costs, but is sort of the transparency, between lead buyers and lead sellers. And with regards to even GDPR, I mean, if you're a buyer, you really have to know that your partners are being
Yeah,
compliant and all that
100%.
sort of stuff. How do you,
100%.
yeah, how do you find? Are you finding that there's more communication and more transparency, or is it about or less now?
I mean, I can't speak for every business,
Yeah,
Michael, but I do know that from my point of view, I've set up Archmon to be a deliberate, sort of agile consultancy of different practitioners working together to achieve a goal.
yeah,
For example, if a client of mine was a software developer and they wanted to generate leads, I would refer them to my partner. And I'd have a commercial agreement with the vendor to be compensed accordingly. But ultimately, I want to encourage the line of communication directly between both the vendor and the lead buyer,
hmm,
because number one, obviously, legitimate interest in GDPR and who has the data and why. And secondly, I just think that it's important for the vendors to maximize their opportunities by having regular lines of sight and contact with the client to ensure that they're keeping abreast of any changes, stock issues, or new events, or copy on the website. And there's like a million things that can happen. I mean, I of course can share that information and proffer that value to the vendors, but ultimately, there's just sometimes a bottleneck of data and information. So I think the key thing here is to just encourage those lines of communication.
yeah. And it's not. I suppose it's not just one way either, right? I mean, there should be some expectation on what communication that the buyer's providing feedback on the data as well to the lead seller, right? So they can optimize.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, if you look at a lot of the lead systems, that measure the cost per lead or measure the conversions, they don't always tell the truest picture. You just have like a kind of a click or a so-called conversion, but there's all sorts of circumstances that go into it. And I think for a lead generation campaign and affiliate campaign to truly work, it needs to have two lines of communication outside of measurement. Because there's a lot of the human effects as well. For example, you might be doing a free trial, for example, right? Now, of course, the system is going to say that it's the lead conversion's higher, but there's a reason for that. But actually, there might be better quality leads coming through with a higher lifetime value when it looks lower on the system a month later when the trial's ended. So it's actually making sure that the vendor knows what the context is about what I suppose the lead buyer is trying to ultimately sell to the
Yeah.
end.
I have actually, it's a funny story. It was not really that funny. I had a number of years ago, I worked with one of the larger life insurance companies here in the United States. I won't say the name of the company, but
there's a few.
We we were generating tens of thousands of leads for them on a monthly basis. And it was a big deal for us to get this business because obviously it's one of the largest life insurance companies in the world. And for us to send them leads was, really, really great. But the problem when we started setting up the campaign and getting everything set up was that, one, they didn't want the leads in real time via an API or a post or anything like that. They wanted us to send a batch of leads every night in an Excel file to them. And we were like, okay, well, that's not great because you're not going to be able to. Yeah,
God,
you're
it's
not.
just all that work for what? Yeah, it's crazy.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So, we were sending thousands of leads a day to them in an Excel file. And then we got everything going. And then I talked to my counterpart over there and I said, okay, great. How can we get feedback from you guys to ensure that the lead quality is good? And if it's not, what's going to help us optimize and all this sort of stuff. And you know what they told me? They said, well, we're not going to be able to get you any feedback for 6 months. And I was like, oh gosh, I mean, we can't. I mean, 6 months is like a lifetime in internet.
I
Years.
mean, how are
And
you meant to make any? Because
yeah,
you get to month 6, you do an optimization in month 7. What? So you're going to see if it works in month 12?
yeah,
Is that
exactly.
the
And
project?
yeah, it's crazy. And so I told my then boss, I said, okay, we basically have a 6-month run here because 6 months from now, they're going to likely say that the leads aren't great because we really don't know and we haven't had any chance to optimize it. And, this probably not going to work out. And it's not going to work out for a whole bunch
I
of reasons.
think
One,
it's
they're not
down
calling
to
leads in real time, all these sort of, so this,
yeah.
goes to the point of transparency and working and having some processes in place as a lead buyer to optimize and talk with your partners. But it was crazy.
Totally. That is a nightmare, Michael. And I've been there many a time. It's two-way as well. The vendor needs
Yeah.
to step up and say, look, you are not going to get any success out of this campaign if you don't feed back to us and you don't action them in real time. There's always stats around, like, say, 400% plus increase if you follow up within, 12 hours or 2 hours, whatever it is. And, it's a fact. You're paying for a real-time piece of intelligence. And, from the user's point of view, you might look a little bit shoddy if you don't come back straight away.
Mm-hmm.
So no wonder the conversion is flagging. And if you've got a lot of other people who are responding a lot quicker, they're doing themselves a disservice in a very, very, and I know this in the US, very competitive market in insurance.
Yeah.
So it just seems bizarre, but
it is bizarre.
Surely as a buyer, if you're spending probably millions of dollars, I imagine, on leads, like, why would you not want to maximize that investment?
Yeah.
Well, anyone listening out there, just follow up on your leads. I don't think you get anything out of it.
Well, and there's plenty of studies out there that say, within minutes, following up on those leads, and every minute that goes by, the likelihood of you closing that lead goes down. And it doesn't matter if the lead's being sold multiple times. It could be an exclusive lead. But when somebody's out there, you can get a lead exclusively, but that doesn't mean that person's not shopping around any other places, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then the client comes back and says stuff like, "Oh, well, they've been called 3 or 4 times before." Well, yeah, because you left it a couple of days. That's why. Clearly the buyer's in market because they've looked for your service.
Yeah.
Now, if they're in market for your service, it means they're in market, and they're not going to go, "Oh, I'm in market, but I'll wait for them." It doesn't work like that. If you put consumer at the center and everything you do, and the prospective customer at the front of everything you do, you will understand that.
Yeah. And I think, there's a misconception that even an exclusive lead is somehow magically exclusive to just them. I mean,
Yeah,
if someone's searching online, they may fill out a form. They're not going to just stop right there necessarily. They may. And if you get them pick up the phone immediately, then there's a good likelihood you can stop that process, but they're likely going to continue and research and
of course.
potentially reach out to other companies as well. That's why it's so important to, you know, contact the lead
And
immediately when you get
and
it.
and, and I always say to people when they're planning, really do put the customer at the center of it, because with respect, the prospective buyer does not care about your processes. Oh, I
Yeah.
wonder if they have an API or an Excel. They don't care. They just
Yeah.
want to get a quote. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
The disconnect between brands' reality and advertisers' reality and the consumer or customer's reality is just mind blowing.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more. So you you help companies partner up with other, companies with regards to lead gen for purchasing leads, but what else? Is
Yeah,
there
so
Yeah.
my focus is performance marketing, planning,
Yeah.
and strategy. Now, with performance, I mean the maximizing of outcomes from your media spend.
Yeah.
So I would typically use channels such as search, social, affiliate, you know,
Yep.
buying leads on a dem gen basis, maybe some direct response stuff like TV and print. But ultimately, it's utilizing, maximizing the media mix to get them to spend more and ultimately earn more.
Yeah.
And that's it really. And and luckily I've been in this game enough now to know, and long enough where hopefully I work with the right people who they do what they say they're going to do,
Yep.
and they're trustworthy. I trust them. They will then speak to and work with the direct buyer, and they'll be aligned on the plan that I've put in place with the buyer. And yeah, so whether the goal is affiliate marketing, so we might work with a CPA, whether it's basket abandonment, whether it's a good bit of copywriting or writing a white paper. I have copywriters, tech partners. I have Facebook and Google bidders as well. So all these people are cognizant of what the goal and the outcome of the campaign is. And usually the less KPIs, the better. There's usually a single KPI. It's usually a sale, a
Right.
lead, whatever, right?
Yep.
As long as everyone's cognizant on that, then everyone's aligned on the same incentives. And ultimately the incentive is to have a happy customer, and everyone's, spending each other, helping each other out.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a real value to having those established relationships that you probably have, because, one challenge is the learning curve of trying to find the right companies. And sometimes they all kind of look the same or say the same things, but not, having, a person like you with experience with specific companies is really shortening that learning curve, probably.
Hopefully, yeah. I just hope that I can take the time I've spent building up my network and working with different people. I hope that that is something that I can mitigate for prospective clients. Something where they can come to me and I can be someone who ultimately fixes them up in the right area, and essentially being a performance agency on record, but also with other people who can empower their goal. And I always say, even though I trust them, doesn't mean they have to. They don't have to take my word for it. The proof's in the pudding, Michael, as you know.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
anything we would say about testing. We test, we learn, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't.
yeah,
And I'm pretty clear about that. And I always try and put everyone in the best foot forward. But it's important to understand. I always think as well, I say to the client, transparency and expectation, what this is and what this isn't. This, if you want leads, why are you buying an out of home ad? If you want to grow your brand, why are you buying brand terms on Google? It's having the right tool for the right job.
yeah, yeah.
I always
No,
use the analogy. You wouldn't use a butter knife to cut a steak, right? You
right.
need to use the right tool for the right job, and hopefully, I have a toolbox that I can share with my client.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. Tell me about a little bit about the industries that you work in. Is it are you specific to banking or personal finance or insurance, or is it sort of
Yeah, great
agnostic?
question. Great question. I've become a lot more. I'm doing more on B2B now.
Hmm.
I mean, down the years, I've done, when I was working in sort of pure play lead gen providers, I was a global head of partnerships at an international dem gen business. I was looking after things like solar, education, uh, you know, healthcare, B2B, moving, and international movers, those kind of leads, big players. But then now I use that for mainly lead gen. So generally, if a B2B client comes to me, Dem gen lead gen is one of the first things on the planning sheet. But I also work with a lot of other clients, for example, B2C providers who have quite tight margins on e-commerce. So they typically would work to a cost per action or cost per acquisition model. But that's not to say that they wouldn't look at leads. For example, some of them have signups for eCRM and downloads and I don't know, just generally signups or competitions or vouchers. And they often work on a cost per registration basis, which is a lot tantamount to lead gen as well. But generally, I think you find that certain sectors go for certain things. I'm sure you'll agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. Tell me, one thing you said was education and EDU. I was talking to somebody else there in the UK, and they were telling me that the EDU sort of marketplace is starting to grow, and there's more opportunities within performance marketing within that sector. Is that something that you're seeing as well, or
Oh,
more
definitely.
universities? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the whole digital nomad thing, right? Everyone's getting around the world. They're in, I spent a couple of months in Cape Town myself, Bali, all over the place, Australia. People are traveling around the world to work from anywhere. And with that has come a sort of a online gig economy mindset. And with that has become the growth of you know, online courses.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. Online MBAs, the Get Smarters of the world, the MBAs you can get, or the Harvard or Stanford or MIT courses that you can do, Erasmus. There's so many of these players out there who are making the world a little bit smaller by delivering education. It's becoming more popular in the UK. I'm finding businesses are offering these services as part of their personal development for their employees. And so I'm not surprised at all, even though I've not done much in that sector in the last sort of 12 months. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely not surprised that it's growing because you can just see it. I mean, especially you guys over there, your side of the pond. EDU is bread and butter, isn't it?
Yeah, well, EDU here in the United States was, very big industry for lead generators and websites that were looking to promote those colleges and universities. Although probably about 4 or 5 years ago, it went through a pretty tough time with the regulatory issues coming up, and the government really looking at that industry very, very
I remember
closely,
that. Yeah.
and sort of killed it a little bit.
Was that around
Schools got
2015,
very scared of
2016?
buying leads. Yeah. What's that?
Because I was at LeadsCon in 2015 maybe or
Yeah.
2016. And around that time, I was speaking to a lot of the guys there, and they were starting to say that things were starting to get a little bit spicy there.
Yeah.
Things were changing a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. It was about 2015 or so when the government and regulatory bodies started to look at how schools were getting paid, how they were buying leads, how then the whole process, and a lot of it I think stemmed from the fact that so many people get government loans to go back to school, and that sort of trickled down to how they were gaining new students and via leads. And there's some there's a whole misrepresentation thing happening, and the government was looking at it because now, hey, look at all these loans going out and people weren't going to school. It was a big mess, but it's all coming back sort of now, I think. And people.
But this is one. I mean,
Yeah.
this is like one sector
Yeah,
that is actually representative of the wider whole process and the whole channel. It's
absolutely.
about having the reason, the legitimate interest, the implicit consent. Because
Yes.
if I'm applying for an MBA at, I don't know,
Yeah.
Texas or Phoenix or something, I don't know.
Wherever. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to know explicitly what it is because I think, the whole kind of like variousmbas.com kind of thing, that kind of market.
Exactly.
That's the
Yeah.
one that suffered because there wasn't really any real reason for the institution to, they wouldn't know that the institution was going to contact them basically.
Right.
Doesn't surprise
So,
me.
so what industries seem to be the most active within lead gen, demand gen, and is it what verticals? Earlier you said sort of what certain industries fit more for that mold of buying leads. What industries would you say those are?
Yeah, I mean, I look at I look at my own journey in the last year. Like
Yeah.
I've been running my own business, so I look at LinkedIn and Facebook. A lot of the lead gen forms on Facebook and LinkedIn are becoming quite popular, and I've seen
Mm-hmm.
this. And a lot of the people who are buying these leads are kind of your software businesses, your small sort of project management software businesses, for small businesses, accounting software, design software, things like Templify, things that can make nice PowerPoints and ebooks and infographics really quickly if you put in a logo. So there's a kind of a thing to outsource and make things look good, the sort of experience design kind of businesses. And what they're doing a lot of things about, sending people to white papers or even an Instagram story. You swipe up and you can get your 10-point guide to the best content. And there's a value exchange there, because I think what people like to read now are listicles and downloads, and I can see that now through Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Regardless of the platform, you've got a very similar. If you're a business person, you're a similar audience. They know me on Facebook, even though I'm on LinkedIn, and that's the obvious B2B play. They know I'm on Facebook and Instagram, probably looking at some dullard project management page. So they then target me there as well. And that's the beauty of good, integrated digital planning. You can target your user with the right content at the right time on the right platform.
Well, what about the bigger purchase items like solar panels, or there in the UK, or
Yeah,
even water heaters, or that sort of home
solar's been a funny
services?
one. Yeah, solar's been a funny one. It's kind of like your education. That took a little bit of a dive a couple of years ago, without remembering the full details of it. The government did not exactly incentivize that, because there was a lot of government grants that went into it and the subsidies for kilowatt hours. Now that subsidy was taken away, and then overnight, a lot of the solar lead gen guys, they just vanished.
Yep.
I don't know, what's it looking like over there?
Yeah, I mean that's it. It's very specific to what states have specific subsidies. Like you said,
Yeah.
if a state doesn't have a subsidy for solar panels, then it generally isn't a state that people want to buy leads or even generate leads in, because solar panels are getting a little bit cheaper and all this sort of stuff, but there's still, it helps to have those subsidies in place. And so very similar, just depends on what state. Right now, I think it's only maybe 10 states in the United US that really lead gen for solar panels makes a whole lot of sense for.
I read a really interesting. I was reading Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 book, and he mentions about certain industries and clean tech and how things develop and people get on it. It was like a big global virtue signal or a business plan, but actually, it's probably too nascent and too early for it to be maximized. So, the point I make there is that solar probably happened really quickly and really, very aggressively. It's hit a wall due to subsidies, and obviously the government saw they were giving it away by the thousands.
Yeah.
So they've thwarted it, but I do believe it will come back, and it will come back better, and it will come back with a more clear proposition for users, for consumers. And I think hopefully with that will be a much smarter lead gen play. So again, maybe that's a conversation for another time, Michael, but hopefully in a year's time, we'll be talking about solar and it'll be back up and running, because I really think it's a great initiative given the right government support, of course.
So are there opportunities for marketers, in the UK to build out websites and publishers for verticals like insurance or life insurance, where they can drive traffic, create leads, and then sell them to the insurance companies?
Yes and no. I think there's people doing it successfully, but they have been through very strong legality to ensure that there is an explicit consent for the insurer stroke buyer of the lead. And there's a few people who get the one-to-many model working really well. Generally, I think, sensible one-to-one microsite building with the right distribution and the right simplicity and call to action is the way to go. That's my recommendation to clients.
Yeah.
However, I'm not going to sit here and say that those who are doing it and doing it properly and ethically aren't getting it working. But I just think it's a better user experience if I'm looking for someone, and then there's an ad comes up for some Michael Insurance, and I click through it. I know it's going to be Michael Insurance, and I click through it. Michael Insurance, call me. That's the utopia. for me.
Yeah.
And that's the way that any brand building its brand and building its customer base should operate.
Yeah. I mean, we have, sites, if we think about mortgage rates and remortgage, here there's tons of websites. I mean, a big one is Lending Tree,
Yeah.
which is sort of the example that I always use for people who go, well, what's lead generation? I go, okay, well, Lending Tree is a marketing company. They are not a bank. They drive TV, um, online advertising to their website where
Yeah, it's a
people
ping
can
tree.
shop for the best remortgage rates. And so what happens, they fill out the information, then they're told where their information is going to go to. It goes to, 2 or 3 banks, and then those banks call them where they can then compare rates and choose the lowest one. Um, but Lending Tree is just a marketing company, and that banks leverage to get more and more scale that they can't get on their own.
How have they got
Um,
on the last couple of years? Have they grown or flatlined
Very
or?
good. No, very
Yeah.
good. They're growing, very very much, very successful over the last number of years. And they're in multiple industries, not just finance, but they're in home services, they're in insurance, auto insurance. So it's the same process where they're driving traffic to their websites, capturing information, and then selling it to a insurance company or a mortgage company, whatever it may be. And it works because these insurance companies and mortgage companies, like I said, can't necessarily do it on their own. They need to leverage other companies to get more scale and
Yeah.
get better leads. And so it's quite a nice marriage,
There's a
because
synergy and everyone working together like a collective of
yeah,
buyers
hmm
to generate that resonance of leads. I get that.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. It happens in the UK, but just I think on a smaller scale.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But that there's nothing better than generating your own leads, right? On your own landing page, and doing that sort of thing, as well.
Yeah,
But
I think going back to the one, would you want 1% of 100 or
yeah,
1% of 1,000 or 10% of 100?
yeah,
I feel like that's the equivalent, one to many model with multiple buyers. You're up against it. Different people are going to get called. It's
yeah,
going to convert lower. You're going to make more calls. Whereas if you can get the right journey, be smarter, follow up less, get more. That for me is the modus operandi. But again, how you'd have to interview various people with different views, because I'm sure that what I'm saying would be challenged by those who are doing the one-to-many model and are
yeah,
doing it really
sure,
well. But I think ultimately I think it's just understanding. The fact is, whatever your opinion or dogma is, the key thing is the opinion.
yeah,
The key thing is the relative sort of performance. If you get one thing, expect it to be a bigger, longer sell. If you take one thing, it might be more expensive, but it's going to be returning. It just
yeah,
depends what your model is.
yeah.
Right.
So I got one more question before I let you go. We've
Oh,
got
far away! Don't feel the need. I'm going nowhere.
we've got we're bringing, as you know, obviously Lead Generation World Conference to London in October. And, the whole premise of that is really bringing together sort of the industry, both the buyers and sellers and service providers like yourself, all together to really talk about best practices, so that, there aren't like the story that I talked about, a lead buyer that's getting them all by Excel file and not processing them. So educating not only those guys, but also bringing the lead sellers and service providers and agencies together to promote best practices. But having said that, when you look at sort of the future and your experience within demand and performance marketing, where would you like, where do you see where would you like to see some kind of improvement in sort of the industry or relationships moving forward? Is there some area that goes, you know what, it'd be,
Yeah, it's a good.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that the lead gen industry and both the buyers and the sellers need to work closely with industry bodies such as the Information Commissioner to ensure that they're fully clear about what's happening.
yeah,
The IAB, I think it's important that given all their best practices and terms on social and programmatic and paid search, I think it's important to get those guys on side to understand what a lead is and isn't. I think as well, if you're a lead buyer, there should be a mantra that you sign. If you come to Lead Gen World, before you can enter the space to buy tickets, please answer these 5 questions to qualify. How do you take your leads, on the back of a stamp in the bin, or do you take them, real time? On a serious note, I mean, I joke, but I think there needs to be a minimum standard of lead buying behavior, because the lead sellers, they're doing their bit. I think it's two-way. I think the buyers need to step up, like you say. Your 10,000 life insurance leads a day example is that's endemic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think ultimately a lead is only as good as the follow-up and as the quality. And if you're investing good X amount of dollars or pounds in a lead, you owe it to yourself. Just follow up, get the customers, and we all live happily ever after.
Absolutely. I love it. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. But that would be good. And I think actually it should be a questionnaire. And I'm sure a lot of lead generation companies would like to pick and choose their clients, and those that actually work the leads and have a process in place. They'd be more than happy to work with and even prioritize those clients versus clients that don't have a process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you joining me today. And it's always fun talking shop. Hopefully maybe we can do it again down the road as we lead up to the conference and just continue to talk shop a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's all I've been doing all day. And I mean, just to let you know, it's 5 o'clock here. So I think I'm near the end of my talking shop run today, but I'll be back fresh from tomorrow onwards. So
definitely. Well, how does, if someone wants to reach out to you, how would they get a hold of you?
Oh, they can contact me. I have www.archmon.com. The site's being rebuilt at the moment. I've got the guy working on it, and that's going to be rebuilt with some new examples, new case studies. My products and services really exciting. I'm available on LinkedIn, Simon Akers. Find me on there. You can follow me on Twitter, Simon83, and also just email me, simon@archmon.com.
Perfect. Well, thanks for joining me today, and I'll make sure all that information's up here for anybody that wants to write it down. But thanks, Simon, for joining me today, and we'll talk again later.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Awesome.